again. What a ridiculous dream. Even more over the top than what that guy promised. Looks like the Express has once again taken the wrong route. There's nothing we can do about it. In the river of time, if cause and effect can be kept apart for long, they're bound to have a terrifying reunion. Am I right, Observer? Watching us from behind countless veils. I've been rambling on since the show just started. You must be totally lost, aren't you? Then just forget all that nonsense I was spouting. Anyway, stop looking here. What you should be focusing on is them.
Hello Trailblazers and those yet to embark on their trailblazing journey to a recap of Honkai Star Rail version 4.0. Now, I know this is a bit of a weird video to be watching on my channel that's usually due to gaming, but I wanted to kind of start something new, as well as this is a project for a class, so I was loving to kind of put this together, and I'm going to really enjoy putting together this kind of clips and farms for you, as well as talk about the lore of Honkai Star Rail version 4.0. So, for those of you who have never played Honkai Star Rail, who are maybe just getting into Honkai Star Rail, or who have thousands and thousands of hours on Honkai Star Rail, this video is all for you. I want you guys to sit back, relax, and enjoy my recap of version 4.0. Now, to begin this recap, I want to go over the three main things you're going to kind of need to know to get into the lore of Planarcadia. And the first is the ancient history of Benzai Tengoku, the original planet of Planarcadia. The second is eons and paths. And the third is the groups and people that we're going to be kind of interacting with inside of the lore of this version. Now, I would like to preface this by saying a lot of this is going to get very complex and very quickly. I'm going to try and dumb a lot of it down, but again, Honkai Star Rail likes to tell their stories in a very fragmented and segmented part that kind of all comes together at the end. So I'm going to try to do my best to recap it in the best way possible for you, as well as if you'd like a more concise and something that has a little bit more lore heavy as well as theory heavy, go check out Ashkai on YouTube. She does a lot of really good YouTube videos, as well as I also did some of my research for my video to help me understand it through her videos. So without further ado, let's start with paths and eons. Now, what are paths? Well, paths are kind of the power set in this universe. Every person walks a path, which is a kind of personality type, and the personality type they follow gives them powers based on the path that that personality type revolves around. So, for example, if I like to protect people, I'm probably going to be preservation. If I like to destroy things, I'm probably going to be destruction, and so on. Now, eons are kind of the presiders over their path. Each eon presides over a single path and kind of picks and chooses how much power and who gets what, kind of. Again, this is not a comprehensive lore video of all the lore of Honkai Star Rail, just the minor things you'll need to know. Now, I will be referencing eons and paths as their names, so erudition or destruction. So if you hear me call out a very specific word, it's probably a path. And if I call it a name like Enna or Nanook or Methys or Aha, I'm probably referring to an eon. Now let's talk about the lore of ancient Planarcadia. Now Planarcadia used to go by the name of Benzai Tengoku, and the god of elation, Aha, gave Benzai Tengoku an imagine called the Phantasmoon that would mark the start of the Phantasmoon games, and they were the first to participate in the first round of the Phantasmoon games. Now during this first Phantasmoon games, Nanook, the Eon, rose to power and started thrusting his antimatter legion across the galaxy. The Consternation star system was one of those such star systems that was affected by the Antimatter Legion. And so, to protect the planet of Benzai Tengoku from becoming destroyed, Graphia, using her miracle as well as the powers of Imagenesis that she used, as well as the powers of the God of Elation, sealed the world of Benzai Tengoku in a painted scroll, preserving it and keeping it safe from being destroyed by the Antimatter Legion. Now that Benzai Tengoku was safe, we needed a way to get the people and the world of Benzai Tengoku out of the Painted Scroll. And so, with the help of the IPC and Punklordian Ether editors, they were able to essentially recreate the world of Benzai Tengoku, and they renamed it Planarcadia. The IPC put Pearl and Intellitron and one of the members of the Strategic Investment Department's 10 Stonehearts in charge of this world reconstruction program. Now that's kind of all that's really important for the history of Planarcadia, but when it comes to the Phantasmoon games, a lot of things are going to get really confusing really quickly. So I'd first like to discuss what Imagine, Wispe, and Imagenesis are. Now, Imagenesis is part of wish power, and every person on the planet of Elation or follows the path of Elation has wish power. And wish power is kind of like fans. The more fans something has, the more wish power it has. And so wish power is kind of a system of belief. The more you believe in something, the more wish power you give it. So people can create anything they want from any drawing just as long as they put enough wish power into it. So robots and dazzling aliens from across the cosmos can all be created from the drop of a pencil. Now, Imagenesis has to do with that creation. That wish power imbued into a object and a belief system creates Imagenesis, which is the creation of new life through wish power. Now, wish power can also condense into Wispe that can also be turned into Imagine through the process of Imagenesis. But Imagine that are left or forgotten or lose their wish power turn into Wispe, and then Wispe kind of just dissipate if they lose their wish power. So there is a lot of focus on giving Imagine and Wispe wish power so that they can stay being alive. Now, let's kind of move on to the factions that are going to be important. Now, one of them is the IPC. Now, I'd like to kind of turn to those who are sci-fi nerds and compare the IPC to essentially the Empire or the First Order. However, the IPC more wants to control the universe and control the outcomes of the universe rather than just take it over, because they want planets to still have their political stability while kind of having the IPC loom over them. So, similar, but different. There's also the Stellaron Hunters, which are hunting Stellarons, which are seeds of harmony, which we figured out that Jipe created as a sort of world-ending cancer that worlds could develop that people would have to band together to fight against. And the Shenzhou, which we'll find out later what the Shenzhou Yuchue is doing here and why they sent their diviner general. So, with all the kind of history out of the way, let's step into the real world of Planarcadia. Now, I'm going to let the game kind of explain to you what happened during the Amphorius chapters because it's a lot of lore for an already long video that I really don't want to get over. So I'm going to let it do the job for you. So we'll be back after this short break.
To address the fuel shortage, the Astral Express followed Miss Black Swan's suggestion to travel to Amphorius, a place known as the Eternal Land. However, soon after the arrival, March suddenly fell unconscious, and the landing that Don Hung and I made on Amphorius was anything but smooth. After surviving the crash, the Trailblaze Squad met the local heroes known as the Chrysos Heirs. From them, they learned that the titans sustaining the world were beginning to decay, and that Amphorius itself was scarred and broken. Thus began the prologue of the Flame Chase journey. At the end of this epic adventure, we uncovered the truth. Amphorius was trapped within the eternal recurrence, created by Finan and Cyrene. Their goal was simple: to defy the Aeon and rewrite the world's fated end of destruction. Carrying on Finan's legacy, we stepped once more into the cycle, determined to find a way to break free from fate. After thwarting the schemes of Xandar, the First Genius, and Evernight, we finally gathered together to face the Lord Ravager Irontomb. The battle was so immense that it even drew the gaze of Noose. Herta took Irontomb's place, completing her self-coronation as the Lord Ravager fell. And Cyrene, the Child of Remembrance, gave her life so that the seeds of a new world could take root among the stars. And so, the Epic of Amphorius came to an unprecedented and romantic close. In Noose's extrapolations, The fourth instant had already begun its countdown, with the spirit of Trailblaze shining in full. We brought this journey to a close in the purest, most poetic way imaginable. And as we bid farewell to the Eternal Land, the Astral Express set off once more toward its next destination.
Now, after this little recap, we get to talk to Himiko, who is talking to Jade from the Interastral Peace Corps' 10 Stonehearts. And Jade wants to invite the Astral Express to Astropolis to meet up with the people that want to be part of the Anti-Destruction Alliance. Because what happened with Iron Tomb wasn't just a localized event to Amphorius, it was bad for the whole cosmos. And people are afraid and terrified and want to have somebody that's watching over them to make sure that the destruction doesn't ever create another Lord Ravager the same as Iron Tomb. Now, the problem here, and the reason why we decline Jade's invitation, is because the Astral Express doesn't focus on politics or the socioeconomic state of the universe. They simply trailblaze. They go to worlds and fix problems that are happening with them that are outside of the world's political control. So them headlining a disaster organization like the Anti-Destruction Alliance probably isn't the best thing for them. So we politely decline, to which Jade responds to Himiko, telling Himiko that the moon over Planarcadia is full once again, which Himiko finds a little strange, and I'll talk about that. Now, the reason this is a bad thing is because of the way that the Phantasmoon works. The Phantasmoon only gets full every 25 to 30 years, so it getting full after 15 years is a very strange coincidence. So Himiko recommends that we all take a vacation after the events of Amphorius to the world of Planarcadia, in which Jade replies that Pearl actually wants to meet us there as long as a Shinjo envoy to talk about the Anti-Destruction Alliance. So we realize that it was Jade's plan the whole time to have us go to Planarcadia. Now, there are a couple of things to note about the Phantasmoon games that are important before we embark on our little expedition, and one of which is how the Phantasmoon games works. Now, the Phantasmoon games is split up into 8 different masks that supplicants can pick up and put on. If a supplicant puts on a mask, that mask is claimed, and only 8 people can enter the Phantasmoon games. And the way in which the Phantasmoon games works is by gaining wish power from those around you, by performing miracles, and by becoming essentially very popular, kind of like a streamer awards. Now, the other thing that's important to note is that there are 3 steps to the Phantasmoon games. The first is roll call, where you announce and put on your mask and announce that you're a supplicant of the games. The second is the miracle, in which you perform some act of elation to cause people to look towards you and give you their elation and wish power. And the third one we haven't really talked about yet, nor has the game talked about, and it's called promotion. Now, we'll get to what I think about promotion at the end of the video, but for now, it's just kind of leftover lore. So we step off the Astral Express and meet up with Sparkle, and Sparkle has told us that the IPC has let her know to lead us around because she's a denizen of Planarcadia and was from Planarcadia, so she can kind of show us around. She introduces us to Duomension City, the biggest city in Planarcadia, but not the only city. And Sparkle talks about the world of Planarcadia, as well as Imagine, Wispe, and Wish Power to us, as well as explaining how the Phantasmoon games works and kind of what they're about. We meet up with a little Furbo that takes her picture, and we'll talk about that Furbo later, where after that, Sparkle tells us that there is somebody else that wants to enter the Phantasmoon games, a streamer called Sparksy. Now, if you're watching this video and you're looking at the screen and you're looking at Sparksy and Sparkle and going, why are the two the same? They are the same, and we'll get to why they're the same, but that is a story for later. Now, we go back to the central area in which Sparkle runs away because the actual person that was supposed to be leading us around was Scott. And for those of you that have recognized Scott, you have played the Holy Grail lore. I did not. I didn't really care. And there's also, to preface, going to be a lot of times in which Honkai doesn't just talk about their crossovers, but also talks about crossovers from other games that are important to the lore of this game. One of which being Sparkle's crossover into Honkai Impact. We're not going to get into that. Too much complication. Let's just say stuff happens. Now, to continue the story, we meet Sparksy, who hops out of the world in the painting, which because everybody can kind of hop in and out of the 2D and 3D world, and it's kind of a daily and almost normal occurrence for people, and Sparksy doesn't like Sparkle. In fact, Sparksy is an Imagine created by Sparkle because Sparkle wanted a virtual VTuber model that she could parade around in that could essentially be her mask, because she's a masked fool. And we'll get to why masked fools are important later. Sparksy doesn't like Sparkle and wants to mess with her toys, the Astral Express and the Nameless, and so Sparkle throws a lot of her fans at us, and then also brings us into the world in the painting, which we escape kinda quickly. Again, we also learn some new things, so that's whatever. But they are stopped by Kuchiba, who is a part of the Department of Aberration Defense, which is kind of like the police for imaginary beings, which is a little weird. Anyways, Sparksy runs off and Kuchiba kind of introduces us as well as points us back in the direction of Himiko. Now, while all of this has been going on, Himiko has been meeting with Pearl to talk about the Anti-Destruction Alliance because we don't really want to be part of the Anti-Destruction Alliance because the real reason the IPC wants us to be part of the Destruction Alliance is because they want to have control over the Astral Express. Because they kind of want the Astral Express to headline as the most popular person, but they want to be in control of the Astral Express if things go awry and opinions shift. So they want to use clauses of their contract to essentially take control of the Astral Express, which Himiko doesn't think is a good idea, so they kind of agree decline. This is because Himiko and Welt, the eldest people on the Astral Express, agreed that the Astral Express shouldn't be the ship that everybody sails on, rather the sail that cuts through the noise and brings people along if the need arises. And so, Pearl reluctantly agrees with this, while Himiko gets a message from the Trailblazer that something has happened in the park, and so we kind of split up. Himiko sends Welt off to Graphia Academy while letting us know that we also need to meet up with Welt at Graphia Academy to find a Professor Dolly who has Himiko's mask from the time that she participated in the Phantasmoon games. Now, as we walk over to Graphia Academy, we get ambushed by Welt, who thinks that he's a teacher there, which he isn't, and ambushed by Sparksy, who messes with our minds and makes us believe that we've been a student here for 2 years when it's actually been 2 hours. Now, this is a little confusing, but what happens is we kind of go through a weird fight with Scott, and then we pick up his Cosmocon Collective card and realize he was an IPC person the whole time, and so we break free. We now realize that Sparksy has a 2-hour head start on us, so we use March 7th Power of Remembrance to trace the path that Miss Dolly took, finding that she's locked herself in the art room, except for the fact that Sparksy has been following the whole time. So we look and find that our version of ourselves has already taken the mask, and it's actually Sparksy, because Sparksy used information she gathered from Welt to lie to Dolly to get Dolly to believe that she was actually the Trailblazer, and she wastes no time putting the mask on, becoming the first supplicant of the Phantasmoon games. Sparksy sicks her fans on us the Trailblazer in March 7th when Evanesia brings the Trailblazer outside of the room, leaving March 7th behind, and brings the Trailblazer into the Phantasmoon courtyard. Now, Evanesia is a confusion of a character, but we're not going to get into how confusing she is because she's kind of a watcher, but may also be a supplicant and may also be a bunch of other things. Anyways, Evanesia gives us a supplicant's mask. Now, why is a supplicant's mask here important? Well, the law on Planarcadia states that only other supplicants of the Phantasmoon games can interact with a supplicant's goal to reach elation. So, if a supplicant is going around and tickling people for elation, nobody can stop them but another supplicant. So, Evanesia gives us a supplicant mask and tells us that we have 36 system hours in order to defeat Sparksy, or else we become Sparksy's slave forever, which is kind of a stupid trade-off, but whatever. Now, while this is going on, we meet up with a new character called Yao Guang, who is the Master Diviner for the Yu Chui, the Shenzhou Yu Chui. So, the Shenzhou envoy we were supposed to be talking about earlier. Anyway, Yao Guang is a Master Diviner, and Yao Guang has the ability to kind of divine prophecies, and Yao Guang foresaw that a Master Diviner would die on Planarcadia. And the Master Diviner that was supposed to show up was actually Jingyuan, but we'll find that out later. She kind of has a very passive-aggressive fight with Pearl, in which she kind of says that something bad is going to happen, and that she also knows that Blade, a wanted criminal from the Xianzhou that's committed all 10 of the unpardonable sins, is here, and kind of needs to be captured, to which Pearl says that Yao Guang can kind of do whatever she wants and take care of Blade however she wants, as just as long as she doesn't interact with the Phantasmoon games, because the IPC wants to seek to control the Phantasmoon games and kind of make them boring and a cash grab, which Sparkle and Sparksy don't like. But we meet up with Tingyun, who is trying to infiltrate the Sinwish Syndicate to get the mask that Sinwish Syndicate has, because they're trying to hire the Xianzhou's #1 assassin, which Yao Guang believes is Blade. So she breaks in, which Yao Guang tells Sunday and Dan Heng and lets them know that one of her people might be stuck in a trap, to which they show up and kind of all improv that they're all the Xianzhou's #1 assassins, which catches the eye of Polwave, who lets them know that the reason that he wants the mask isn't actually to kill anybody or to use the #1 assassin to do anything. Now, all the people in the Sinwish Syndicate are Imagine, and the reason that Polwave wants the notoriety rather than to kill people is because he wants the people in the Sinwish Syndicate to keep living because they're Imagine, and he doesn't want them to be forgotten and turn into Wispe and die. So he thought hiring the world's #1 assassin, or the Xianzhou's #1 assassin, was a great idea to achieve that? Maybe not the best plan, but we'll talk about why that's not the best plan later. Anyways, he hands the mask off to the three of them, and they bring it to Yao Guang, to which Yao Guang attempts to put on the mask and then thrusts it at Sunday, who, it's kind of like no take-backs at that point, because again, remember, once a supplicant puts on a mask, it cannot be traded, and it cannot be given away. So Sunday is now a supplicant in the Phantasmoon games, which is a little strange, but whatever. Anyways, we meet up with Silverwolf, who is trying to hire a detective, because somebody stole the mask she was trying to get. The one from Polwave in the Sinwish Syndicate. Anyways, she meets up with a detective called Ashvale, and Ashvale says that he's going to, help her, and agrees to help her. Ashvale immediately sends her location back to Pearl, because Silverwolf is a Stellaron hunter, and they are literally wanted across the cosmos to the IPC. And Silverwolf taps the communication line and figures out that Pearl is hiding more masks. So she goes to meet with Pearl to talk to her about ether editing, because Pearl wants to learn emogenesis. But because Pearl is an Intellitron and focuses on knowledge rather than craziness, she can't really create stuff, because she's a robot and doesn't have emotions. So Silverwolf says, I've got you, I'll teach you ether editing. And she kind of reluctantly agrees and gives Silverwolf a mask. Now, while this is all going on, we meet back up with the Trailblazer, who's in the production office of that Furbo magazine we talked about earlier. Now, Furbos are essentially like paparazzi, and the owner and president of the publishing company that they're part of, Nihilux, kind of just up and left. So they hired the Trailblazer as their new publishing editor. So everybody meets at the publishing office and talks about what they've been doing, and Yao Guang kind of says that she's determined through her divination that something bad is going to happen on Planarcadia in the upcoming days, and that a Xianzhou general is going to die. And the reason being was because Jinyuan was actually supposed to be here, and when she used her divination to find out that if she went instead of him, what would happen, the future kind of fluctuated, because she also likes to mess with the future, because as a Master Diviner, somebody who can literally have powers beyond her comprehension and has the Eye of Ishvara, which allows her to literally see future predictions, it's kind of a game in cat and mouse when she wants to play with fate. So she plays with fate by going to Planarcadia herself. Now we figure out that Yao Guang has something else wrong with her, but while she talks to Sunday later, we'll talk about that. Anyways, we kind of meet up and then split back up again because we have a date with the World's End Tavern. Now, we go through and figure out the riddle that Sparkle left for us behind that was talking about the Phantasmoon. Whether looking up or down, they still view the same Phantasmoon when looking at the sky. We figure out that means that we need to use interplanar jump to jump into the world in the painting and jump into the center of the water to enter the World's End Tavern. To which we get to see a bunch of really trippy things, and if you're watching the gameplay on screen, you'll understand why it's trippy. Anyways, we finally come face to face with the Masked Fools, and we kind of find out that the Masked Fools really don't like Sparkle, because Sparkle sheds her mask to fit the audience, which as a Masked Fool and as a person who likes to act, probably isn't the best idea when you're an actor to follow what the audience is doing rather than what your actors are doing. Anyway, they make a joke about when you remove the mask from a masked fool, what do you have left but a fool? Which references Sparkle continually removing her masks and her loss of self. But we'll get to that when we talk about the fatal joke. Anyways, we meet up with Sampo, who is all too more happy to give us a jackhammer to jackhammer into the memorial lines that fill this golden throne, which is literally just a room full of toilets if you're watching on screen. Anyway, we meet Sparksy's Memoria Fragment, and Sparksy's Memoria Fragment kind of does the evil villain thing of sharing their plan all at one time so that we know what their plan is, but her plan is essentially to infect everybody with a Sparksy memetic virus to make them all believe that they're Sparksy so they can have their 15 minutes of fame and know what it's like to be a popular streamer for 15 minutes, which sounds absolutely horrible. But we move on, and Sparkle takes us to the fatal joke, in which we try to find out what we can do to stop the Sparksy virus. Now, to preface this, a memetic virus, which we've already dealt with one in Penacony, which we'll talk about, essentially infects the mind. It's a mind virus and then a body virus. It essentially changes your memories and affects your brain in a way that feeds your brain redundant information. So one of the ways to wipe it away is like wiping away a canvas with water. And we'll get to why Himiko talks about that in a second. But anyway, we meet back up at the Fatal Joke, in which we meet with Sparkle's old masks and talk about why Sparkle sheds her mask so often. But we also learn about Yao Guang's little infection. You see, Yao Guang kind of had an accident with an extrapolation array and now has something called temporal dislocation, which in plain terms, she can randomly and without warning to anywhere plus or minus 1 to 12 system hours and within 15 meters of her current location. So she can just time travel for no apparent reason. Now, we find out about the Sparksy virus and how it's a mimetic virus and how it feeds redundant information, and Himiko kind of says that she might have a solution, and Sparksy offers that she has these anti-Sparksy weapons, which is where we get to talk about Honkai Impact, because I have not played through the crossover event between Honkai Star Rail and Honkai Impact because I really didn't care because Honkai Impact is pay to win. But I guess there was a crossover event in which Sparksy or Sparkle gets transported to Earth and fights with some lady in a robot and then built a robot. You actually, I guess, can interact with that character in Planarcadia. I did not do that quest line. Again, very short on time. I'm probably going to play a lot of the quest lines for 4.2 and 4.3, but again, a little confusing and a lot of additive information that never really needed to be there in the first place. Anyway, we go to the lady that tells us that Sparkle is losing herself because she keeps shedding her masks, and so she can't remember what the original Sparkle was like. And so she says that because the mask is kind of acting on its own now, or Sparksy is acting on its own now, that the only way to solve the solution would be to kill the actor behind the mask, because if there's no actor behind the mask doesn't function. The doctor's solution? Cremate Sparkle. Now we do get a choice on whether to cremate Sparkle or not cremate Sparkle, and whether you choose to cremate Sparkle or not, Sparkle has taken the remotes out of the battery, and it was a test the whole time. And then Himiko threatens Sparkle with an orbital laser. Casual Honkai Star Rail. Anyways, we head off to the collection room to figure out what Sparksy has stolen. Except Sparksy stole not just the mimetic virus, but the anti-Sparkle weapons. Yes, the thing we were kind of coming there to look for. Anyway, she attacks us with another one of her creations, we defeat it, and we end up leaving empty-handed. We head back to the central stage of the World's End Tavern to go to the Bliss Ball, which only a masked fool can open. Now, because we are a supplicant in the games, we are considered a masked fool. And because the ball won't open for Sparkle, because her mask is Sparksy, and her Sparksy is already off doing God knows what, we open the ball and step in, to which we get met with Aha's primordial laughter. The mythology goes that at the beginning of the universe, Aha saw a newborn fall and laughed, and that laugh echoed across the cosmos. There is a lot of references to this mythological thing throughout the ending of the patch that you kind of laugh at how many times they reference it. Anyways, it's said that if a masked fool is in need, they can reach into the primordial laughter and Aha will bless them with whatever they need to finish this quest. And so the Trailblazer reaches in and pulls out a banana? Well, actually, it's a copy of the Slumber-nana monkey virus from Penacony. If you played through that Penacony thing, you'll understand that they kinda all get turned to monkeys. Anyways, Himiko says that this is a great idea because if you're already infected with one mimetic virus, you can't be infected with another, so it'll be great protection from the Sparksy mimetic virus, to which Ashvale, who has been trailing us the whole time, finally shows his face and says that we shouldn't be using the Slumber-nana virus because that's how his little monkey friend narrator got turned into a monkey in the first place, and it might end up causing the end of Planarcadia as we know it, and might turn them all into monkeys. Anyways, Sampo ends up teleporting in and saving us from Asheville before Asheville has the chance to do anything about it, and we leave, headed towards Graphia Academy. At this point, I would like to take a minute to say that it's about to get kind of dark and a little bit of story-wise, so I do want to preface there's going to be a lot of dismembering talk and a lot of murder talk. Not to put it lightly, but there's a lot of killing that happened during the last Phantasmoon games that we're going to talk about. So, we, through our little Furbo friends, have found out that Sparkle has already figured out about our plan because Himiko created a plan. Himiko's plan was that a medic virus is kind of like a stain on the brain, like a stain on a canvas, and the best way to wipe a stain off a canvas is with water, and because the water from the Dovebrook is from the painting canvas and it's magical, it can cure the memetic virus, which we find out later doesn't work, but Himiko recommends that we use the World Breaker Waves painting. Now, the World Breaker Waves painting was created by Graphia, and it was created based off of the water from the Dovebrook that she used to clean her paintings. Now, this painting is important because it's not just created through Imagine, it's created through Imagenesis, and it's actually come to life, so it can literally create water from the Dovebrook, which we'll see later. But Sparksy, knowing this might be the weakness, somehow, I don't know how she figures it out, splits the painting up into 3 pieces: the boat, the moon, and the waves. Now, while this is all going on, we get a little bit of talk and conversation between Sunday and Yaoguang, in which we find out Sunday's tuning ability and dream weaving ability is kind of going off the rails due to the mask's power. Now, the masks of Elation don't just act as wish power collectors, they also act as kind of power-up pylons. They use the other people on the planet that have the same path or share similar path to you and amplify your power using theirs, which allows you to do feats that you normally wouldn't be able to do, like Sunday being able to bring the Dreamweaver Ravens to life, which is actually pretty cool. But Sunday's tuning ability is also going off the rails, and he talks with Yaoguang about why Yaoguang didn't put on the mask when she had the chance, and Yaoguang said because of the mask's amplifying power and because she's a diviner, if that mask was put on her, she would have divined the entirety of every single person on Planarcadia, essentially setting Planarcadia's negative outcome as the future, as truth, rather than just a divined instant. And so she thinks that instead of using that eons can actually be called down because 30 years ago, she was in an accident on the Yuchway that left her as the only surviving member, wiping out her entire people, as well as the denizens of abundance. But she believes that with her divination, she can bring Aha to the table and essentially take a control of a god as its puppet master. Which is strange, but not the strangest thing I've heard in Honkai Star Rail. Either way, Yaoguang kind of talks about what happens, but kind of leaves short of some important information. We finally head back to Graphia Academy to once and for all take on Sparksy, and Sparksy has something very important to say. Sparksy says that she is the real Sparkle, and that Sparkle is just the mask, which is already confusing because which Sparksy is Sparkle and which Sparkle is Sparksy and Sparksicle, and it's confusing as hell, and I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, Sparkle says, "Watch over me, I'll fight her to protect you," and they enter some cartoon-style beat-up mode in which we find that March 7th calls out for our name because Welt has already found one of the pieces. Because we find out that Welt wasn't actually brainwashed. He just liked being a teacher so much, and it was easy to get information out of people if people thought he was brainwashed. With the help of our Furbo friend's picture, we find out that the waves are in the library and the moon is in the gymnasium, so we head to the library. Now, this is where the story gets a little dark, and I'm not going to talk about it yet, but we travel to a Twilight classroom, and that Twilight classroom is stuck in the date of July 22nd, 1984. Now, why is this date important, you might ask? It's important because it has to do with something that happened at the Phantasmoon games 15 years ago when Himiko was a supplicant. Now, at this point, Himiko says, kind of crying, that she doesn't want to talk about it yet, and that once we defeat Sparksy, she'll talk about it to us. But essentially, she says something bad happens, and we hear squelching and screaming coming from outside the door as we're locked out. Eventually, we find World Breaker Waves, and with it in hand, we leave and meet up with March 7th and Welt once again, which they tell us that the moon is in the gymnasium. We do a little bit of interplanar jump to fight a little emoji that has the moon behind it on the basketball hoop. We retrieve it, learn a little bit about Himiko, kind of, and we end up with all 3 pieces. We assemble the painting and watch the waves wash over Sparksy as she fuses with Sparkle to create Sparksicon, to which we fight, and the Trailblazer separates Sparksy and Sparkle, to which Sparksy puts on her mask and tries to escape into her crowd of Sparksy clones, in which Yao Guang shows up with Sunday, and Sunday uses his tuning ability to essentially let us see through Yao Guang's eyes, and with her divination, we're able to see the symbol above Sparksy's head. We slap Sparksy with a baseball bat into a wall, and Sparksy falls to the ground. We talk with Himiko, and Himiko lets us know that maybe it's Sparkle's job to take care of Sparksy, to which Sparkle and Sparksy kind of realize that they both hate the IPC and both want to be part of the Phantasmoon games, so they run off with each other and disappear. Anyways, Himiko finally tells us the story of what happened 15 years ago, and what she tells us is nothing short of dramatic. She tells us that 15 years ago, somebody entered the game they called the Herald of Death, and he would kill people and mark their bodies with magenta hands people would call the Death Bloom. And that day, July 2nd, 1984, the Herald of Death walked into the classroom and killed 22 students that were left over there, and then walked over to Dovebrook and killed or injured 146 other people. Because remember, wish power isn't just gained through good means. It can also be gained through negative means. And while this is all going on, we meet Ryusuke, or at least we think it's Ryusuke, who says that his daughter Himiko died in the games. So who exactly is Himiko? To which Himiko replies that her father never cared about her and was never even here for the Phantasmoon games. So who the hell is he? And we kind of end off that story with a little bit of that cliffhanger. We return to Ashvale, who is talking with Pearl about what's been going on, because while this whole Sparksy thing's been going on, a new string of murders has happened that mimic the Death Bloom. Now here's the problem. A supplicant can't enter the games twice. They can only enter the games once. Once they've entered once, they can never enter again. With this in mind, and after there's a new copycat killer that's already killed 34 people, Scott from the IPC included, as well as the Sinwish Syndicate gang, Asheville chooses that the best way to find the killer that's taking place during the Phantasmoon games is to join the Phantasmoon games. So reluctantly, he accepts Pearl's invitation to have a mask and joins the Phantasmoon games. As we end, we see Evanesia talk about the Phantasmoon games. All the masks have been collected. They've all been assigned to their supplicants. And now it is time for the Phantasmoon games to begin. Thank you all so much for watching this video on Honkai Star Rail version 4.0. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you'd like to see me do more of these videos, including one for 4.1, as well as in a couple of days, 4.2, I would be happy to do that just as long as you let me know. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please go check out Honkai, which I got a little bit of my information from, as well as some of the simplifications. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.